Number 10. A huge crocodile. One of the strangest things ever found in a river was a monster crocodile discovered in an African river north of Zimbabwe near the border of Mozambique. Of course, there are lots of different types of dangerous wildlife in the rural parts of Africa, but this was no ordinary animal. It was vicious and cunning, and threatened local residents with its presence. In fact, this huge and terrifying crocodile was so big that it had begun to feast on the local cows. It was so dangerous that the poor croc was hunted down and killed by an animal control officer. Nobody thought at the time to measure it, but the local villagers did get a photograph of the deadly crocodile, which experts have estimated to be around 16 feet or 5 meters in length. That's nearly as big as the longest saltwater crocodile in captivity today. If left alone, this river monster could very well have moved on from cows to people, devouring everyone in the local villages. Number 9. An ancient Slavic god. In 1884, one of the strangest artifacts in archaeological history was pulled out of a muddy river in Ukraine after over 1,000 years of being forgotten. The artifact was a 4-headed monolith carved with human faces and strange symbols. And ever since its discovery, it has confounded researchers all over the world. To this day, the outrageous 4-headed monolith is the only existing monument to a Slavic culture that existed before the rise of Christianity. It's known as the Zbruch idol, which translates to English as World Seer. Historians believe the idol was probably representative of a Slavic god of war. It was probably pulled down and then thrown into the river as garbage sometime between 800 and 980, around the time when Christianity began to spread and become prominent in Ukraine, Belarus, and Russia. This was a time when other pre-Christian gods and idols were also being destroyed as the new religion took over. The idol itself is almost 9 feet or 2.8 meters in height. It consists of 3 separate tiers. On the bottom tier is a man on his knees holding the upper portion of the idol up. In the middle tier, there are 2 males and 2 females with their arms extended. The top tier is the largest and most dominant, and is believed to be the central god entity with 4 different faces to represent 4 different unique attributes. Though, to be honest, historians still can't agree on what exactly all these depictions truly represent. It's still something of a mystery, even today. Number 8. Lost fuselages. Disaster struck in 2014 when a train jumped off the tracks and landed tons of cargo in the river below. Crews in Montana found themselves having to pull a trio of Boeing 737 fuselages out of the Clark Fork River after a train derailed and all of the precious items it was carrying landed underwater. According to Montana Rail Link spokeswoman Linda Frost, this was the first time the company needed to pull their own cargo out of a river. Strange, right? There was no listed explanation for this incident. Fortunately, nobody was injured when the 19 cars derailed, but a lot of damage was caused and valuable cargo was lost or destroyed. As for the cause of the derailment, it was still under investigation at the time of the report. Boeing had to send workers to the scene to assess the damage, seeing as these 737 fuselages belonged to them. Out of the 6 fuselages being carried, 3 landed in the river and the other 3 landed on dry land. They were supposed to be delivered to Washington, where they would eventually get assembled into new airliners. As if the fuselages in the river wasn't hectic enough, the derailed cars also dumped soybeans and denatured alcohol. What a bizarre mix of cargo to fall off the back of a train. Number 7. Bones in the Red River. A man in the Canadian province of Winnipeg made a rather grisly discovery at the bottom of the Red River. Barnatoth, a local man who loved the outdoors, had begun magnet fishing in his local rivers during the COVID-19 pandemic as a way to get outside and enjoy some fresh air. It was also a fun hobby that he could do with his family to help clean up the rivers. But what he hadn't expected to find were a bunch of bone fragments and a knife. At first, Toth said he thought he was just pulling up sticks. Upon closer inspection, he realized he had come across a deposit of bones. Not only did he find bones, but he also discovered a knife that could have been used as a murder weapon and a possibly related flashbang grenade. Naturally, the magnet fisherman called the police, and even though the authorities refused to comment on the situation, CTV News reported that the fisherman believed some of the bone fragments belonged to a human. Considering all the evidence, it looks like something pretty horrendous went down in the Red River. But since the police were keeping their mouths shut, we don't know the full scope of whatever tragedy happened here. Number 6. Mysterious cubes. 60 mysterious cubes covered in strange numerical inscriptions were recently found by another magnet fisherman in Coventry River in the United Kingdom. These cubes looked like something out of a Hellraiser novel. They were found by the fisherman and his 2 sons while they were sifting through shallow water. The cubes were small enough to be pinched between a person's thumb and forefinger. Each one was extremely light, and all of them were inscribed with neat grids and a language that appeared to be ancient Sanskrit. That's a language from India, which is nowhere near England. What brought these cubes halfway across the world? Nobody is exactly sure what these cubes are, though some people have claimed they could be connected to some sort of Hindu prayer ritual. They definitely appear to be Indian in origin, and the inscriptions on them were probably used for prayers while being thrown into the river. Nobody is exactly sure what ancient Indian artifacts were doing in an English river, and absolutely no progress has been made in tracing them back to their origins or even dating them. In all likelihood, somebody from India was traveling in the area and lost their prayer cubes. But there are more mysterious possible explanations out there. Number 5. Laughing gas and jelly beans. When volunteers decided to clean up the River Worth, also in the United Kingdom, they discovered some very unusual objects. In fact, they discovered a lot of unusual objects. The cleanup volunteer group pulled out stuffed teddy bears, a can of jelly beans, a large bag of clothes, several shopping carts, a large terracotta cactus painted gold, some thrown away license plates, an entire bucket of syringes, and perhaps, most strange of all, a bag filled with empty laughing gas canisters. Oh yes, and a small hoard of old toilets were found either inside the river or on its shores. Apparently, this river in Yorkshire has been used as a dumping ground for years. One of the volunteers even said he witnessed people pulling up in cars and throwing entire bags of trash over the bridge and into the river. The sad part is that even though the volunteers have done a great job cleaning up and finding cool stuff, chances are the river will still get filled with toilets and jelly beans again. Have you ever volunteered to clean up garbage in a natural place that was polluted? Where did you go? What did you find? Tell me about your experience in the comments below. Then, if you haven't already subscribed to Talltanic, do that now. More strange videos are coming out very soon, and you don't want to miss them. Number 4. Prehistoric bear tooth. A diver checking out the bottom of the Copper River discovered a fascinating animal fossil from a time long before humans ever lived in North America. Eric Prowl sees himself as an amateur fossil hunter, and he was thrilled when he pulled a prehistoric bear tooth out of the river. The tooth was about 3 inches or 7 centimeters in length, and belonged to a giant, short-faced bear, which went extinct a very long time ago. And, believe it or not, this wasn't Eric's first amazing find. The year before, he discovered a woolly mammoth tusk while combing the bottom of the river, as well as several dozen shark teeth and the jaw of a prehistoric cat. Giant bears appeared in the United States about 800,000 years ago, before spreading north to Canada. The average giant black bear then could reach about 12 feet when fully drawn up, and weigh about 2,000 pounds. But unfortunately, these bears went extinct roughly 11,000 years ago. Well, unfortunately for them, but fortunately for us. I know I wouldn't want to encounter a bear like that while I was out hiking. Would you? According to Richard Holbert from the Florida Museum, they were the biggest carnivores that have ever lived in North America. It's also likely that our prehistoric ancestors hunted them and eventually drove them to extinction. Those were some incredibly brave cavemen to go toe-to-toe with the legendary short-faced bear. Number 3. Mutant man-eating fish. In a river in India, a giant man-eating fish was targeting swimmers after having developed a taste for human flesh. This horrifying fish was a type of goonch, which is essentially a large and very hungry catfish. According to the report from the Daily Mail, the enormous fish had been feeding on corpses thrown into the Great Kali River following funeral ceremonies. The fish had likely been eating corpses for years and developed a lust for the taste of humans. This was likely what prompted the fish to begin attacking swimmers who dared venture into the river along the India-Nepal border. But don't worry, this fish was found and caught. The famous wrangler Jeremy Wade from River Monsters journeyed to this remote place and was filmed catching the mutant fish. Jeremy claimed that the goonch was not only large, but unnaturally large. It had eaten too much food and turned into a massive mutant. When Jeremy caught the fish, it weighed 161 pounds and was about 6 feet or 2 meters in length. For that species, it proved to be a record. The goonch was so big that it could have easily eaten a person, at least bit by bit. Number 2. Floating mummies. An ancient Egyptian mummy was recently found floating down a river of sewage. That's right, a legitimate mummy was found floating in garbage. Not just one mummy, but several ancient mummies and their sarcophagi needed to be retrieved from a river of dirty water, where locals found them floating near the town of El Minya in Egypt. According to a statement directly from the Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities, 2 never-before-seen mummies from the Greco-Roman era had been buried in tombs about 150 miles south from Cairo and left untouched for thousands of years. Of course, until some grave robbers uncovered their resting places and then dumped the mummies into the nearby irrigation canal to avoid being caught. Grave robbers had probably been working on an illegal excavation. Rather than risk being caught with the large mummies, they likely stole artifacts and antiquities and then dumped the bodies. By the time the authorities fished the mummies out of the river, they had been significantly damaged by the disgusting sewage water. In fact, Daily News Egypt reported that the sarcophagi had since disintegrated completely. And this is a huge shame, seeing as the mummies and their tombs could have proved invaluable to historians. They were likely buried sometime around 350 AD. Number 1. World War I machine gun. A treasure hunter recently discovered something incredible and deadly from over 100 years ago. Nick Lee discovered the treasure he pulled out of a Yorkshire river using a magnet as a once-in-a-lifetime find. He managed to pull out a Vickers machine gun from 1915 that may have been used by British soldiers while fighting on the Western Front. The Vickers machine gun was known for its reliability in battle and its durability. And after sitting underwater for 100 years, the reliability really shows. The gun was in fantastic condition, even though it had been at the bottom of a river for over a century. After World War I, a lot of used weapons ended up being melted down or thrown in rivers by local factories. This weapon had obviously been one of the latter. After the discovery of the gun, Nick was trying to find a museum willing to put the very cool war relic on display. What's the strangest thing you've ever found in a river? Let me know in the comments, and thank you for watching. If you haven't already, don't forget to hit that subscribe button for all the best videos from Talltanic.